In this lesson, we'll look at the Systems tab, specifically the electrical area. So in Revit, let's go ahead and click the Systems tab on the ribbon. The electrical area is to the right of the ribbon. Now before we look at each of the tools to create electrical elements, let's look at the electrical settings. To the right of the word electrical is a drop-down arrow. Go ahead and click that, and that will display the electrical settings. Now there are a lot of electrical settings within electrical in Revit MEP. Briefly, as an overview, I'll go through each one of these. The first setting are the hidden lines and how you would like those hidden lines created. Below that are the general settings for your electrical components. Angles are where you can tell Revit to create a specific angle, use an angle increment, or use the angle that you tell it to. Wiring, these are the general settings for wiring and their values. Now below that are wire sizes. The wire sizes are based on material, temperature, and insulation type, and you can see that by clicking the drop-down arrow, where you can choose different ones that are already preloaded, or you can add, or you can remove. Likewise, for the amps listed below each, you can add, change, or remove these. Now below wire sizes on the left are your correction factors for, again, each material and temperature, and also ground conductor settings for each material. Below that are your wire types. These are wire types that are already pre-configured based on ratings in the installation and the sizes within Revit MEP. Voltage definitions are below that, using your standard definitions, or again, you could add definitions as well. Likewise, here are your standard distribution systems, their settings, and again, you can add or remove these. Now, below wiring are your cable tray settings. These here are your general settings for cable trays. Rise drop below that are your settings for your rise and drop within that cable run. And then you also have single line and two line symbols. This is where I can create and change those symbols depending upon this cable run that you're creating. And then sizes. These are the sizes you can use for creating your cable trays. Now below the cable tray settings are your conduit settings. These are your general settings for conduit. And just like cable tray, you have rise drop setting, and also your single line and two line symbols. Below that are your conduit size settings. Now they're based upon standards, so in the drop down at the very top, you could change the standard and see those settings for sizes for each standard. Again, you can add, change, or remove any of these standard sizes. Now below that are your load calculations for all of the above. Looking at load classifications, click on the button, Load Classifications. This shows me load classifications for different elements within an electrical system. So as you click on each one of these, you'll see the name, demand factor, and then any class that may be associated. Click OK. To look at demand factors, click the Demand Factors button. This shows me the factors, again, based on the electrical equipment or the electrical component that you select on the left. And as I select each one of these, you can see the various settings for those elements are listed. Go ahead and click OK. And lastly, our panel schedules. These are the base settings for your panel schedules. So as you can see, there's a lot of electrical settings already pre-configured within Revit MEP. And again, we'll touch base on those in one of the additional lessons moving forward. Go ahead and click OK. Now, as far as the commands to create electrical components, in the electrical area of the ribbon, underneath Systems, the first option is Wire. This is where you can create different types of wire runs. In this case, I'm looking at creating an arc wire just by clicking several points, defining that wire run from component to component or from element to element. You can also do a spline wire or a chamfered wire. The next icon over is Cable Tray. This is where you can create a straight cable tray that's rigid, one that is in a channel or more of a ladder approach. The next icon beyond that is Conduit. This allows you to create a straight, rigid run conduit. Again, you can have corners or bends, and then the fittings would be associated. Parallel conduit allows you to create parallel conduit associated to a conduit that's already created, as depicted in this pictorial or little video. To the right of that are cable tray fittings. This is where you can drop in fittings within an existing cable tray run for corners or tees, for example. Below that are conduit fittings. Just like cable tray fittings, you can apply your fittings for your conduit connecting your straight runs. And then to the right of that is electrical equipment. This is where you can drop in different electrical equipment such as panels, other switches, and other gear, and have your electrical systems tied into these. To the right of that is a drop down for devices. And there's a lot of different devices that you can put into your electrical equipment or your electrical system. First one are electrical fixtures. These can be receptacles, junction boxes. You then have communications, you have data, you have fire alarm components for detectors, lighting elements for different sensors, you have nurse call station elements, security, and then also telephone elements. All of these can be placed within that electrical system. And then finally, to the right of that, you have lighting fixtures. These allow you to place in lighting fixtures that can be associated to the ceiling, to the wall, or to the floor. And they're calculated in the electrical system, so they're smart, they have intelligence. This lesson was an overview on the electrical components within MEP. We looked at the electrical settings and the vastness of those electrical settings. And we also looked at the various commands for creating electrical elements ranging from wires, cable trays, to conduit, and then all of the devices and the equipment that would go in each of those electrical systems.